to this meeting of full council this afternoon. Welcome councillors, welcome staff and any members of the public that are here. Just remind people that the meeting is being live streamed and it will be recorded. So for those who are viewing online, we'll just be thoughtful about how we speak, and looking forward to a really good productive meeting. Just looking at the agenda, apologies. I'd like to record the apologies to Councillor Brent, who, as we know, is on medical leave. We don't need an apology for Councillor Cope because he's on approved leave already. So I'd like to put a motion that the apology to Councillor Brent is noted. Thank you, Councillor White, Councillor Thing. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Moving to conflicts of interest, just checking with regard to the items on the agenda, if councillors have any conflicts that they wish to declare.
I will say that freedom campaign again.
Okay, that's
the process.
Thank you. That's noted. So we move now to the public forum, and I believe we have one speaker this morning. Florence. You have 3 minutes to talk to us. I look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kia ora. I'm called Florence Toko Ingoa. We all agree Wanaka is a beautiful little town. We all came here for that, or your parents came here for that, to live a tranquil lifestyle. Oh, sorry, gone skiing. But as we all experience, lifestyle quality has decreased due to tourism influx and rapid urban expansion. And it's not only me saying that. This is from the Shaping Our Future a while back, problems, solutions. So tourism growth and sustainable is a solution. Over 20 years, I have been to many community meetings. In each of them, attendants ask to stop urban sprawl. Each of them. Tourism and growth are the biggest challenges, not the solutions. Now, the carrying capacity of the land is over the maximal load, particularly for the water pollution. As the Wanaka structure plan is being developed with smart growth in mind, it's going to plan for a citizen assembly. But while waiting for its outcome, I am asking for an immediate pause on new consents. It's possible. Greytown did it, I quote, stopping new connection applications until the treatment plant's capacity is planned for and funded. That's what we need now. The Smart Growth April meeting minutes mentions differing community expectations. But there is no divisive issue here. It's people versus a few developers and the council who doesn't say no to them because of current unsustainable rules and pressure by the government growth agenda. But you were elected to deliver equitably for people, businesses, community, and the environment. At the moment, it's mostly business as usual, and the trees are disappearing fast. 5 months ago, I stood in front of you asking for a moratorium on tree felling. Since then, at least 5 windbreaks have been cleared, creating an instant southerlies corridor. Don't tell me they are just poplars, or I've heard nasty Douglas firs, because they are the main mature trees we do have. They are all mighty, useful trees. When they are gone, they are gone. They are critical green infrastructure and need immediate protection. It's possible. In Canada, 2 towns have endorsed the Universal Declaration of Tree Rights. In the UK, Bristol is protecting all the town's trees by piggybacking on the UK conservation laws. In Wanaka, other essential windbreaks are on the chopping boards, including on public land. It can be stopped with an immediate moratorium. By protecting trees, we protect the land around them, which is a cornerstone for sustainable urban development. It enables green corridors for wildlife and tracks, space for sustainable water management, and local food growing, parks and playground for well-being. The current Wanaka South plan goes all the way to Cardrona Riverbank Road Junction, all the way there. More than 10 kilometers north to south, east to east. That's not smart growth. That's unsustainable suburbia, engulfing fertile green fields full of mature birds, mature trees and birds, all allowed by the current rules, removing our chances for a sustainable urban development. So I now ask for a moratorium on new consents until we solve the overcapacity problem and put in place proper protection rules. It's not radical to ask for a moratorium on cutting trees. It's not absurd to ask for a moratorium on new consents. In a climate emergency, what's radical is to keep felling trees. What's absurd is to keep rules to allow stripping the land and making people drive further and further. I wrote 2 articles about it that you've received, and I'm happy to help you for free. Because inertia will be criminal one day, and law is a powerful tool for climate action. Let's do this together. Thank you. Let me hear.
So now move to confirmation of the agenda, and the resolution of the agenda be confirmed without additional alteration. Thank you, Councillor Wong. It's a second. Councillor Belk. David, please show. Aye. That is carried. We now turn to the minutes of the last meeting, which are long. And if anyone who's read them will see we moved in and out of public excluded and public many times. So just we'll move the resolution that the minutes be accepted. Councillor Mitchell seconded. Councillor Gladdy, is there any discussion on those?
Just wanted to quick one thing on the leave applications from last time, the one ordered for me. I only asked for to the 13th of July. I know these get recorded and on the tables.
How long did we give you?
15, but yeah, and the other thing was I didn't start on the 8th either. I delayed it a day because we had a busy day on the 8th, so on the council day. So.
So that should be amended to be 8th to the 13th, which is what you asked for.
That's what I asked for.
Yeah, I think we can set that minor amendment. Yeah. Okay, well, those in favour with that minor amendment, please show. Aye. Against, that is carried. So, first item, substantive item on our agenda this afternoon is water demand management. And I am aware that we have an alternate resolution to be presented to us, and we'll hear from staff. And I think it's fair to say there has been some discussion around this. Thank you from Clinton and Chief Executive and a couple of others to, I guess, tidy up the working solution. But I'm happy to pass that straight over to staff. Thank you, and hear what you got for us.
Thank you. This is the resolution going around. There were some comments around how clear the resolutions were, so we've attempted to try and clarify the intent, so they are editorial changes to those, still keeping the intent, but hopefully clearer.
Thank you, Jane.
They
don't actually change the nature of the recommendation, but technically it's idea.
And thank you for that, because I don't think anyone was looking to change the direction that this resolution would achieve. So.
I'll just kick it off. That's right. Yeah, good afternoon. I'll talk really briefly, and then I'll throw across to the actual smart people in the room to talk about this stuff. I guess you may recall, a number of you in the room, about 6 weeks ago, we kind of gave you an update. We gave you an update on the water demand management piece and the business case and how it was progressing. and then said that we'll be back. That business case was complete. Today we're back because that business case is complete. We keep talking to you around the next steps. I guess the couple of introductions for myself. Obviously, Helen Beaumont, who was here last time. For those who were here, is our strategy and planning manager in Free Waters. Christine McCormack is here today also. She's a key contributor and author of the business case. Also a key subject matter expert who we thought might be best bring along to answer any questions if you have any. Another key, we've got Messina over here in the back. I think it's really, really important because as you're here today, a lot of this is a long-term piece of work, and there's some decisions the CCO is going to have to make to ensure that this matters comes along so we can show that we are united on this. This is probably the first big significant piece of work where we're starting to signal how we're working together and some of the decisions we make by the CCO in the future. So I guess it's really just us showing we're starting to work that way. Last but not least, really quick from me, this is my last sort of item from a SIP manager perspective, because Cameron Martin over here is stepping in for the next year as the SIP, or the Strategy and Infrastructure Planning Manager, and he'll be coming along to these various sessions and talking to various bits and pieces. I'm stepping away to work in the CCO establishment program for the next 12 months to help Maz and the team. So I'll be around, but wearing a slightly different hat. Cool, thank you. I might throw to Helen. Can you kick us off, please?
Thank you. I was just going to give you a very short introduction and overview of what's in the paper, and I'm very aware that the program business case is a very long read. So just a reminder of what we went over at the workshop. So the people of Queenstown Lakes District use a lot of drinking water. So our consumption per person per day is 500 litres, and that's more than double the national average. So that is the challenge that's in front of us. And clearly people are not drinking all of that water. But even when you're having showers, laundries, doing the washing, it doesn't add up. So we need to get to the bottom of what that challenge is. Nor does it correlate with visitor numbers, peak visitor numbers. It's about outdoor use. So irrigation is driving that peak demand for us. And that irrigation is by a relatively small proportion of the community. And in some schemes it's exacerbated by high leakage. And that's why the business case that before you is quite broad in terms of what it's addressing. Now that high demand for water, coupled with the growth we've already heard about today in both the resident population and visitors, has to be addressed either by a supply side intervention, so that's more reservoirs, bigger pipes, additional intakes, or by demand side, and in reality a combination of the two. So Council's Water Services Delivery Plan back in the middle of last year signalled the importance of water demand management for an efficient and sustainable water services delivery. So this program sets out the direction for the demand management aspect of that over the next 10 years. We think once it's approved, if it's approved today, that council officers will initiate the component projects and then hand over to the Water Services CCO at the end of it. So council will continue with its education and awareness campaigns around conservation and start to develop a communication strategy for this program. Council will also step up its leakage detection and repair programs and make those much more efficient and effective in terms of those leakage. And the other thing that we'll do is boost some of the metering work that we've been doing in some of those key supplies where we've got challenges on the water supply. So in Hawea and in Lake Hayes, for example, we're already exceeding our consents in terms of the amount of water that we're taking, and we have to do something about that. It's the CCO that will make the decisions on universal metering and volumetric charging that's signalled in the paper here. So that requires a detailed business case to inform that metering solution. And the legislation means that we have to move away from the current charging basis. So it's the CCO that will have to look at what the new charging and tariff regime would be. The business case is assumed for the modelling a 50-50 tariff, so 50% fixed and 50% volumetric, which is typical of councils across the country. But the actual tariff structure is for the CCO to determine, and they'll need to do some further modelling to do that, and of course it'll be subject to consultation under the water services strategy in the future. Now, I'm aware there's a lot of information here, and that's the reason that we've brought Christine down from Christchurch to help us out, and the whole team's here to answer questions.
Okay, so we'll start, we'll go around the room. Go.
I was in it by chance. I got directed flight on the last workshop, and I'm like, damn. So for me, this was like, wow, it's a lot of information. But in general, I will go straight to the question, I promise. Great to see, you know, in principle, always supported this direction on the way forward. So it feels like a natural maturation of where things should be heading. My big concern is, you know, I know we've got a few thousand, maybe, water meters already implemented in Hawea and Nugget, and some of those have been paid for through government funding and other things. The budget for this metering is about $100 million across most likely 28,000 properties. It's quite significant. I'm just wondering if that budget is more indicative of a rough estimate, or if those numbers are well calculated. It seems about $3,000 per property when they install them in Hawea, and about $1,000 per property based on the final estimate. So that's my only real concern and tension. I just want to speak to costs.
So in terms of the capital budget, the capital, so the capital estimate per property is around 2,000, but there is some operational costs in there as well, and that is just an estimate. It's not a fully detailed costed, and that will come through the business, a detailed business case to do that work.
Yeah.
However, yes, you're absolutely right. It was about $1,000 per property in the pilot trials, and we expect it to be around 750, 800 per property for the simple installs.
Okay.
But some of the installs are not simple at all. So there are some parts of the district that it's not just the animated box. It's find the toady.
Yeah.
And then there may be some very difficult properties. So, but that estimate is quite realistic. You may have seen in the news that Te Ake Wai in Wellington had an estimate of 4,000 per property, and they had some different topography there. But I suspect that a detailed business case will bring that one down as well. But yes, those costs are indicative.
That's a very helpful answer. That's interesting. One last comment. I thought the way that you talk about, espousing the myth that, it's about tourism or whatever, calculating the wastewater as it goes out, correlating that with the smart way. That's great.
Thank you.
Also, away that day, so I missed it. So I just have one question that might have been covered. When we're talking about initial focus on Lake Hayes, is that Lake Hayes like the Lake Hayes and around, or Lake Hayes and Shotover?
No, it's the Lake Hayes scheme.
The Lake Hayes scheme, which is actually
from,
quite small, not, because I think sometimes it reads when you write Lake Hayes, this assumption that it's kind of quite a big area, but we're talking Lake Hayes, not Lake Hayes Shotover.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I was at the workshop, and so I asked a lot of my questions there, and it was extremely useful for understanding what we're doing today. Just really a question around transition to the CCO and the work that we're sort of steering towards now. How does that align with the new CEO coming in, of course, and how are we making sure that alignment is smooth?
So we've feel free to jump in here if you want to, but we've had lots of conversations already around making sure that this business case needs intent behind it, and also what we're planning on doing is suggested in here for the next 12 months. We have obviously some money currently set aside, which is we're still being operated by QLDC. So we've talked a lot about that and making sure that we spend that in a way that there's no regrets, right? There's none of that money is spent and then we go, well, there's a risk we're going to throw that away. We've already worked through that. We're really comfortable with that. Regardless of the option that's chosen by the CCO, we're really comfortable that isn't going to be thrown away, and it's a worthwhile investment for the next 12 months. And obviously we'll continue to work with Maz and the board, etc., as we work through a detailed business case, being prepared, options, etc., and all the considerations that we've just sort of loosely discussed already to make sure those are considered and the board makes an informed decision on how to proceed.
Sorry. The other thing I'd add is that this is a bit of work, like many bits of work that will transition across to the CCO. It's not like the CCO is a new completely entity that doesn't have any contact with it. So we've got a lot of things to be transferred across. this in particular, we're keen to make sure we understood what our role was and what the CCO future role would be, but we're talking about same process as many cases, the same people moving across and carrying the sign, obviously under the CCO umbrella at that point. But this is a very significant decision.
Yeah, I think the key reason for that question is so that we don't have those regrets. We don't waste that time and that money.
Another thing is momentum, right? We've got some momentum building here, which is also, we're really keen to make sure this is not something that we stall and there's a delay or and then any of the data or information comes out of date because we're not made a call. So we're really keen to keep working and progress this piece of work in the momentum with our work the team are doing now, but also straight through to the CCOs. There's no little break. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, this piece of work has actually been shared at a high level with the board of directors just to test their appetite and their support, and they are really impressed with the work that's been progressed today and totally support the notion of no regrets.
I was just, I have a few questions. Was there a cost benefit ratio for option 2?
Definitely, will be the answer. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah, because I think we only got one cost benefit ratio for option 1.
It's all in the program business case. They'll have the
So
cost ratio.
lead detection.
Program.
And then I was just was there ever considered like option 2 with the faster, with the metering staggered across 3? At the moment, it's 5 years, but there was an option 3 faster. But I just wondered if that was considered to do the metering staggered faster with option 2. And it would have been, I mean, and it could have been, because I know there's been a lot of work, but it just would have been interesting to see the cost benefit ratio and how much increase that would have been comparatively and why we didn't have that option.
You mean a faster rollout of the
metering, yeah.
I think when it's thought about years, but I think it's going to be a board decision, a CCO decision in terms of the speed of rolling out benefits, the cost benefits. Even the decision on type of meter and the back office, and even whether the CCO does that, there are suppliers that do this as well. So I think the thing is we'll leave that to the board. It's a critical commercial decision.
Right. So aren't we signing off an option today though? Oh.
Yes, so at the moment we're recommending option 2 for
Yeah.
the program and the 5 year rollout. Most of the justification for that is that the rollout of the meters will be done in an iterative process so that it informs the pilots that have already been done. So we know from the pilots what the challenges are, and we'll know from the next scheme that we put out whether or not we're addressing those challenges. So we'll learn more on the way through. And I think rushing it gives the risk that you might put the wrong solution in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So that's why the 5 meter time frame was there, so that we could roll this out in 5 year time frame was there, and so we could roll this out in a measured manner. And
but Tony, you're saying that the CCO might change it even though we.
Well, I think the realistic thing is that the CCO board and we'll want to know, we'll work through what's the best way of rolling out universal metering, how is it done, there might be a variety of different modes. I don't know if it's still good, it might be they decide to do it fair for us.
So what's the point of us choosing to today if we're going to change
the direction of you. City, I mean, it's a decision to do universal metering, not do universal metering. So, but
I think, like in terms of how it's staged or how quickly the CCO does it, that will depend on the results of the modelling. So once the CCO is up and we start doing some of this additional work, and that will determine.
It's good to know because otherwise I probably would have thought it's going to be done in 5 years if I'm voting on it now. So that's not.
I think like 5 years is the maximum period of time.
My next question is, I noticed in the significance engagement we didn't consult Mana Whenua yet. But were they consulted during the planning of the Council's 2025 Water Services Delivery Plan that actually created this?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think there's no one here probably.
No, I don't believe so. It was a response to councils, how we're going to deliver on the CCOs around the operation stuff. I don't believe there was a explicit sort of consultation in there.
But the CCO will obviously consult with them when they come to doing the more extensive work.
Yes,
Into this
definitely,
option
and will
too.
be, our water services strategy will go out for public consultation and we'll be talking to nothing like that.
Another a basic. What is mock billing?
Oh, mock billing.
Yeah.
So mock billing is when you have installed the meters and you want to demonstrate to the ratepayers that this is what your bill will look like. So you send them a bill showing how much they will be paying under the new tariff with volumetric charges, but you don't actually charge them that way. You continue to charge as the flat rate based charge that you have been using, for example. It's a way for them to actually realise if they've got a leak, for example. So they might see that they've got a really large bill because they've got a leak, and then it
This
gives
is what
them
you
time
would
to
have
actually
Yeah.
fix that leak before they actually have to pay for the additional water that leak is
Oh, yeah.
using.
Alright.
Part of the education part, right? So
Yeah, right.
Because I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know how many we actually know how much we use at our households today.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how much. So
Yeah.
part of it's going, actually, this is what we use today. That might be a little enlightening for some people.
Yes.
And then maybe for you.
Someone actually was, I was talking to someone that did this work in Australia, and they also said, this is how much you're a family of, or you're this size house, this is how much you should be using as well. That would be really interesting. One more, you're going to procure a communication specialist for this work, and it's probably using mock billing and all that stuff. And it did say that you may not go out for tender, and you might just use someone that you've normally used. This isn't a question, but I think it would be quite interesting to see using someone different, because this is quite I don't know, it could be a good way to test. It's a big deal what we're doing, and yeah, I think it would be quite nice to mix it up. Not a question.
Can we?
Can we?
The question is, how would doing something different have a different result?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
okay.
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a couple from me, and noticing that the programme timing, a lot of these different projects run in conjunction with each other. So my reading is that, you know, we're sort of agreeing with this resolution that the projects 1 to 4, you know, are pretty much going to be picked up and started with, and project 5 will be started with in the background. But how that then is implemented is down to the CCO. But we're giving that direction that yeah, metering is on the table for the future. With the different projects, you know, where is the greatest saving coming from? I know they all are contributing, but what's the real benefit in terms of reduction in water use versus the expenditure?
Well, clearly universal metering is the most significant in terms of the volume of water savings. Followed by that, it's the district metered area monitoring and the proactive leak detection and repair. And that is because of the lack of metering, the two are quite symbiotic. Without having the customer metering and having that feedback about how much customers use, at the moment you're limited to once a year looking at how much the network is leaking in and night flows, because during other times of the year, the night use is too high. And so you have to do it once a year in May and actually get an annual snapshot of how much each scheme is leaking, which isn't enough. You know, you need to know more regularly how much water is leaking from the network. So those are the top two in terms of the measures. And then after that, yeah, pressure management is reasonably high, but the costs are also high. So it just depends really on how you're looking at it. So in the modelling, we've got the volume of water savings as well as the cost to actually get those water savings, and then the levelized costs in terms of how much you're spending, how much per cubic metre you're actually gaining.
So the project 1 for council looking at getting its own house in order, I guess is how it would read. Did you paraphrasing that? And the project 2 is education. I guess this is quite foundational to that dialogue and conversation that needs to come about the harsh realities of metering.
And I think what that project with those, the 3 sub-measures within it, what that demonstrates is that you're actually looking after your own house first. So it doesn't have a significant water saving in the model, but you need to be able to report back to the ratepayers, we're doing all we can. So before we're asking you to actually pay for the water you use, we're checking that we're in efficient in our water use. So it's a really important foundational measure, just like education, that it may not be that high in terms of the benefit, in terms of water savings, but it is quite high in terms of the benefit cost ratio.
Yeah, thank you. Are we effectively just keeping the ball rolling on the water demand management work prior to the water services stuff kicking in? And is there any physical work on installation of the meters that occurs before the water services entity kicks off?
We are indeed keeping the ball rolling on the work that we've been doing over the past few years. And
that's already in play.
Yes.
The installation, but is this committing us to new installations? But over the next 12 months that aren't already in play that aren't subject to a further decision by the water services.
Yeah, we are proposing to continue the meter rollouts, and we've got some supplies where we've got meters in storage, for example, that we can't put in until since for the lake supplies particularly, until the filtration is in place. And as soon as that filtration is in place, those meters can go in.
It doesn't commit to volumetric charging until the water services.
No, definitely not. So the metering and the volumetric charging is 2 steps. Yeah. So we can continue with the metering work, which gives us a better understanding of the water use and a better understanding of where the leaks are, so that we can focus on that. But the volumetric charging is definitely a second step.
So one of the, as I've expressed before, one of my large concerns with volumetric charging is that it puts unintended load on permanent residents in the district. So holiday house owners who aren't here regularly use less water, therefore pay less. Permanent residents who are here all the time and have big family, even potentially have big families and do lots of washing and whatever, pay more because they're using more. And then you've got probably a third category, which are rural residential people with really big gardens who are using way too much irrigation water. So how do I get comfort that we're not loading that middle group unnecessarily? You've given an indicative 50-50 thing. I don't know whether that provides the right balance to ensure they're not loaded, or make sure that we're loading the high users correctly, make sure that we're not, to be fair, not actually giving the holiday house owners a free ride either. So
yes, and we've addressed that in the business case. So we don't know either if that 50-50 is the right split, and further work needs to be done on that. And the some of the additional meter rollout will help inform what proportion of holiday homes use what proportion of the water and how big is that split, and that'll help inform that. And then in terms of the 50-50 tariff, while you can do your 50% on fixed charge and 50% volumetric, there's also 2 ways of doing your volumetric. One is that you give people a base allowance, so you can have, say, 400 litres per day per household, which is a sort of average use. And you don't get charged until you're over that, which takes into account that holiday home problem, because they will pay for a usual daily allowance. And it's only the high users that will pay a volumetric charge on top. So that's one way of doing it. And the other way is that instead of 50-50, you might want to start at 80-20 or 60-40. The modelling will inform where you want to start and then how you transition into any different ratios if indeed you need to.
And I think I did ask the question at the time, that does it provide for sophistication for time of use charging, for instance, that 3 o'clock in the morning you get a cheaper rate than you would at.
We did think about that as well, following your questions at the workshop. So yes, you can be that sophisticated. Probably not quite to time of use charging, but your question about irrigation use, for example. Irrigation is the biggest challenge for us, and it's irrigation peak day and even irrigation on peak hour, which is enormously problematic, which is why sometimes, you know, the hose band's in place, and you can only irrigate overnight. So there are options. I know here in Auckland, for example, you can have 2 meters, one for irrigation, one for your household use, and there's a different rate applied to the irrigation meter. That might be something we could think about here where we've got sufficient water, and the second meter irrigation would be only night use, and it might be capped, for example, if there's problems with water in that supply. But you could do that by scheme, and that takes into account, we build our scheme for peak use. We have to, when you turn the tap on, you have to have water coming, whether it's a low use hour or a high use hour. And we have diurnal peaks, okay? So our schemes are built for those diurnal peaks, and there's water available at night in most of those schemes.
Well, if pink issue, so pink issue is the primary issue, but I mean, I
So
suppose.
you
what I'm
could
trying-
have a separate unit for that, but that would be, again, that would be something for the CCO
The CCO.
to look at the modelling, but I expect that they would look at all of those options and opportunities.
And just one last question, you've taken a fairly universal approach across the whole of the network, and we've got different drivers and different schemes, you know, there's different water availability, there's different quality of the scheme, there's different age of the scheme, there's a whole bunch of drivers that where we need to address demand in some schemes way more than others. But also we're trying to provide a fairly consistent level of service across the district. How do you address that issue? Is a one size fits all sort of approach to the multiple schemes?
So the in terms of prioritisation, the leak detection work would be prioritised in those schemes where we have
Just
either
like focusing on low pays.
exactly the greatest estimated use or the greatest peak demand that's giving us problems with the water permitting. So we would prioritise schemes in terms of the rollout of the leak detection program and in terms of the metering program which supports that, as well as volumetric charging.
But when you're running out of capacity in a scheme because of growth, for instance, you're driven by other factors that are, you know, you're running out of water, you know, you're unnecessarily penalising those people because they're not able to keep up with the infrastructure demand. Whereas
I'm
in
not
another
sure.
one, there might be heaps of capacity, but people are still using too much water.
So there's 2 reasons for the problem in terms of the resource consents. Sometimes it's the availability of supply, but sometimes it's that scheme uses a lot of water per household. And the Lake Hayes scheme is one of those that uses a lot of water per household.
But
So
say the average was 500 across the district. There's one scheme that, you know, the availability was only down to 300 or 400 because of the growth in that scheme was still a reasonable amount, but not consistent with the rest of the district.
I think it's a different challenge and
Yeah.
you need some different kind of problem solving, because it's not about necessary consumption and leakage.
and I think that one of the things to emphasise is, while we're here today to talk about water demand management, we're not ignoring supply side solutions either. So there's no doubt that there is growth and pressure on some of our schemes where we will be investing in supply side initiatives. And Lake Hayes is probably one of those.
I'll leave it there, but I, you know, to signal that I will, you know, this is going to be a tricky thing to tread with the Water Services CCO, but I really want to see a system that isn't penalising existing ratepayers by residents because they use more water than others.
Can I also add, I think when we looked at the smart metering data for the 3 networks that have smart metering, what we also found, not just some properties with high consumption due to irrigation, but also some properties with really large private side leaks. So they were on their side of the Toby. There was one particular property in Halia which was over 10 cubic meters a day, and it actually occurred 3 times. So it got fixed, and then like 2 months later it popped up again, it got fixed, 2 months later it popped up again. So without meters,
you just wouldn't know that, and it just goes straight down into the aquifer, you know, with the gravels there. So I think that's another really important thing to think about, is that it's not all actual consumption, it is also private side of it as well as network consumption.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so along those lines then, so the smart metering will be real-time metering, is that monitored through telemetry, and then with triggers if there are those sort of things identified, or is it done by a human eye looking at it?
Yeah, the smart meters are real-time monitoring, and it's all done by telemetry.
So if one of those issues arises, whether it's a dramatic increase, we wouldn't necessarily know. But so that can be detected and then dealt with immediately.
There are dashboards at the moment that you can look at and see that they have leak alerts, and so the operators can actually look at them and know.
Right, that's. And then, so therefore seasonality, because clearly the issue is during the summer, then we'll know when that's coming. But so when those are starting to use more, they will be charged for that period for the usage. It's not averaged out over a longer period.
Can I just jump in here? I think this is stuff that the CCO is going to make decisions on. So I think these are all factors. They're really good points that'll feed into some of the, I guess, the decision making that the CCO is going to have to make around how it actually influences
Okay,
how we go. So I think good point, but
technically feasible to do so. Though.
Technically,
Cool, thank you. Then yeah, around the communication stuff that Councillor King was talking to, I see in the I love the business case document. It's succinct but detailed. So thank you. And given some other stuff we looked at lately, perhaps they could come and talk to you. Not within this council, but later than that. So the communications it talks about in the risk register, because that's my thing, right? Risk. So and right at the front, although I think one slide's repeated, that's okay. Talks about the risk description is in the public perception and community pushback. And then it goes on about how to manage it, which is great. But it's talking about key program delivery risks. Would it be possible going forward to reframe some of this as project initiation risks? Because if this communication, and we're talking about it right now, so this communication happening now, I suppose, that it has to be communicated very inclusively and constructively and upfront about what the risks are now, not in delivery. Because we've had examples recently, despite good efforts, of things like the Frampton wastewater, you know, could have arguably benefited from some more intensive communication earlier rather than actually delivery phase. Is that feasible? Do you think it might help?
you certainly take it on board. It's cool. I'm a very key believer in proactive.
Yeah, cool. And I think that's mine too. So that was it. Then I think going back to, and I hope it's appropriate to do so, I'm happy to be corrected if not, but looking at the proposed resolution, and given that in the Gantt chart on page 82 of our agenda anyway, where it's got a line of where the CCO comes in, right? But it's also got a vertical line, which suggests that's where the CCO comes in as well. So on page 82, it's got the CCO at the bottom with universal metering being the CCO's responsibility. Makes total sense. It also suggests, though, that all of the other projects, as you referred to in different places elsewhere, are QLDC responsibilities. Is that entirely true? Are they all, like the irrigation optimization? That should be. Residential outdoor education, is that a QLDC or a CCO responsibility? Is education a CCO responsibility, or is that sit with us? Or is it a shared thing?
Talking about now, or you talking about
in the future? Okay. After July 28. 27.
So in terms of the diagram you're looking at,
Yeah.
currently shows all those activities as QLDC. I think they'll all be CCO because they're all related to metering.
They will, yeah. So that diagram doesn't show the transition of ownership, it just shows who's initiating the first phase.
So council irrigation optimisation though, is a council
that would stay with council.
Right, so I just wonder if that,
It's a good question because the engagement with the community around education and all of that is something that we will need to partner up on.
Yep.
Because it benefits both organisations and we can cover a number of things.
yeah, I think, so I wonder if the, Montague, would you perhaps find it helpful to identify a communication project that is and by phase, including strategic communication early, at initiation we we're at now, and then in phases as you go along. But at the moment, it's identified against each project, which is great. I think it'd be really good to draw them all together so that they actually follow in sequence with that.
I think we're taking this, I think it's gonna be for the
Yeah.
CCO,
Good
and
one,
think of that whole overall.
Thank you.
And the overarching comments.
Cool, yeah, thank you. Because we have seen issues, and it is a governance issue because it comes back to haunt us. Then finally, thank you for the clearance, Mr. Chair. In the proposed resolution, might it be more clear if it therefore said to agree in progressing projects 1 to 4 of option 2, scenario 2, as set out in business case, which are predominantly QLDC home, and then a new number 3 or 2B or something, agree to working with the Water Services CCO for them to progress project 5 metering. That makes a clarification between what we're doing and what you're doing. Might that help?
So as I understand the resolutions, resolution 4 is intended, that identifies the 5 projects.
Yeah.
And with the rewording talks about council agreeing to implement 1 A, B, C, and D, and noting that project 5 will be the CCO. That's the intent there.
Yeah.
If that's not
Which is kind of what you said.
It is. I get the intent, Tony, and right from the start, I got the intent. But I just think it might help write it, because I still have a problem with us agreeing in principle to something and then actually doing something. I think we should say what we're going to do, which is projects 1 to 4, and then we're going to work with the CCO at their discretion to put metering in place if they see it as viable. And I think it'll help us. I think it'll help people reporting it. I think it will help with strategic communication around it, because it makes it clear what we're doing, helps me get my head around it, which could be a high bar, and then makes it clear what the CCO are doing.
I'm just
I
going
think
to
that-
jump back in on there, just for my own observation, but projects 1, 2, 3, and 4 aren't going to end. You know,
No, they're not.
lots of CCO,
That's right.
and it won't necessarily be council that carries on doing it. So 4D talks about that transition. So
I think it's.
I'm not sure it's that binary.
I don't think it's it.
So okay, well we'll
Just trying to
let's
help.
when we come to we'll come to that on the discussion.
Thank you. That's me done.
Thanks. A lot of the questions I had, you've answered anyway with the other questions that have been asked. I note that the volumetric charging for the services is a separate step that will come after implementation of meters, and that metering part of it is an important component to getting the data and the modelling that you need to be able to do to work out how to do best with volumetric charging. I had the same concerns as Quentin's raised them before too, and I've had them too about what happens with holiday homes that aren't using much water, but I think the answer that you've had, there's different ways of dealing with that. Standard charge, perhaps, or a certain amount of water and then touching on top of that. It's a good one. And obviously you can work out what the operational expenses are of providing water to a property and charging accordingly. And there's also the cost, the capital cost of all the infrastructure to get it there. The question I did have was on the list of cost benefit analysis results. One of the ones that are above 1, 7 highest. It's on page 107 of our agenda. The second highest of total cost below metering is the leak detection here. The improved DMA monitoring part of that, that's the district monitoring areas, isn't it? So that work, can you just confirm some of that work is already happening now, isn't it? It's been work to upgrade telemetry systems and get a better picture of.
That's correct.
Flow.
And what we want to do is enhance that program so that we will do a much better job in that space.
Do you know, is there a feeling for sort of what percentage of that work's been done already and how much there is?
This would be a big uptick in the current program, so we'd probably be more than doubling our efforts into monitoring and leak detection and repair.
And where for this report where it says total cost in millions of dollars, financial year 26, is that money that's already been spent to July to June, end of June this year, or is it money?
I believe that's the same table I'm looking at. It's the meaning that we haven't inflated the costs. So
Right.
they are currently.
So it's financial year 26 value.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so the total cost over the program.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Good. Yeah, and obviously that has a reasonably good cost ratio as well, that particular item. So just time frame of check. Yeah, so like I say, what's the next stage you've covered? I think it's something that we obviously need to move to, so it's good work to see it. Yeah. Question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. So, consultation timing. I might just start with that one. I guess one of my overriding things, and it sort of is aligned with where John's going, which is where does the delegation sit? Like there are projects that we are approving in principle, or maybe not approving in principle, but if we think about project 5, that's going to progress while we're still in charge of decision making, while delegations still sit with the chief executive. There will be decisions around consultation. They're hinted at in the program business case that it might be a significant activity and might need to use a special consultative process. Who owns the decision on significance? Who does that sit with? And in terms of decisions around consultation, where does the delegation sit? So and anything around the linked project of the detailed business case and the request for information that's going out, the request for proposals. It's an awkward space, I think, because it's sitting with us, it's sitting with the delegations that we've given to the chief executive. There are things occurring at the same time that are tricky. Should you be going out for requests for proposals while you're still in the consultation phase? What stage of the consultation phase will you be in? Whose decisions are those? There's a bit of a, can you unpick some of that, or is it a murky mess just by nature of the transition?
Yeah, I think anything up until the transfer agreement has been signed sits with elected members and council, those delegations. If you're talking about the water services strategy, which will undoubtedly include, how we intend to manage consumption, demand, billing, etc., that consultation process is run by the CCO. I think you've already indicated in your statement of expectations that you want us to consult, from memory, that you want us to consult on that. So the water services strategy is developed and the whole consultation goes out from the company.
Right, so that will be at what time?
I'm thinking it will be around the first quarter of next year. So sometime between, maybe around March. I mean, don't quote me, but we have to have the consultation process run.
Yeah.
And the final decisions on the strategy bolted down and in place before we go live.
Okay, I'm just looking at the timelines for procurement and community consultation, which
So
again,
what page?
Yeah, sorry, page 100 of the program business. So just looking at that detail, to me, consultation starts in 2026. Then there are decisions to be made in 2026. Those are our decisions. So to me, decisions on significance probably sit with us. Where I'm going with this is I'd quite like to put something into the into a resolution that says we agree that this is a significant project under QLDC's significance and engagement policy, and we agree that it requires a special consultative process. And then good things will hopefully flow from that, rather than leaving it to maybe, I don't know who to decide. Anyway, sorry, you want the questions in there, but
I think Nikki, in practice it will actually be relatively clear for the CE and the CE as to where those responsibilities sit. We're just working through the transition agreement.
obviously this is new territory. I don't think it will be murky, but there is also probably no harm to adding that. I wouldn't say it was necessarily essential. Yeah.
This is not new work, right? So
Yeah.
you're in your protein plan that sits within that, and it is on the LTP.
Yes, so also in the it's the connection with the volumetric charging piece. Metering comes with, obviously, we're wanting volumetric charging. This is what the business case relies on. So it's a case of just making sure that we know where to direct that, whether it's by the statement of expectations, whether it's via, to me, the simplest thing for the avoidance of doubt is probably to do it now. There are suggestions of it in the business case, but it didn't make it through the report, and that's the bit that got me a bit worried that we could lose it if we don't do something, just to make sure that we get an SCP on it. Just another answer. Look, it's a really big. Well, the water restrictions that we put in place over summer, how much do they really reduce water by use by? It's a measurable amount.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Great.
And that's not just Queenstown Lakes, that's countrywide. I mean, even when they had those floods a month or so ago, and some of the small towns had contaminated supplies, intakes, they asked people to reduce their use. It's a really hard thing. They put a lot of effort into those campaigns, and it's you get a little response.
That's good to know. And just, sorry, I've talked about the consultation, but just in terms of the request for information, the request for proposal process that spans the transit them, have we got clarity in the background between the organisations of who's deciding what? Because obviously we've got water services, CCO staff working on these things, but the delegation still sits with the chief executive of QLDC. Is there a piece of work that we could do in the background just to firm up who needs to ask who, what, when, so that we don't end up with I guess actions being taken by people who don't have the delegation?
I think we've got the transition agreement that we've signed, and that speaks to the transition interface model, which is where Michelle and I are coming together and working out, okay, where does the delegation sit?
I think the risk of that is actually very low. We don't see the behind the scenes workings on that, but it's working very effectively with regards to understanding who's got delegation for what and when. And the nature of the transition agreement is all about collaboration. So yes, for the next 12 months, we need to have that open flow of communication, regular frequency of understanding of scheduling programs and the requirements that are ahead of us. But I don't actually think there's risk that CCO staff will do something that's under the delegation of QLDC. So I think we've got that managerially and operationally under control.
And the company has its own delegations policy.
Yes, but none of these things that sit under that we're deciding on for this next year, none of them sit with the water services CCO. None of them have been delegated. None of the functions have been delegated yet. What I'm worried about, I guess, is through, this is absolutely just in the, people have been doing their jobs, but we have staff who work QLDC who would have had the delegation once upon a time. And so I just want to make sure that the right people sign off on the right things so that all decisions are, I don't need any further. I've put it out there and we'll do whatever you want to.
So the governance is covered within the business case, and the governance at the moment for this program sits under the property and infrastructure governance arrangements. So it goes through an engineering challenge group for technical detail, and then it goes through a program control group, which only Avery signs off. So that side of it, until it goes over to the CCO, all comes
back to Tony. That's what I want to think.
And then the reason why I think the additional, because that's what we're sticking to for QLDC is sort of charge things. Right? We're in parallel, we're making sure the mayor's aware of things that are coming, that are decisions being made today by this forum here, that also potentially have impacts on the two. So we're running both these things in parallel, but QLDC remains the charge, most processes remain. We're just making sure the mayor's and the board where required are being made aware of fundamental decisions. And this is a significant cycle.
Yeah, that was what I need. Thank you.
One last question for me, just for clarification. So if right now this council was going to decide to roll out water metering and volumetric charging, that would absolutely trigger a special consultative process. Am I correct? Or is that just...
I believe so.
Given
the value,
changing
the costs of the method of charging.
That would. Thanks, Doc. Okay, so Tony.
Oh, this is
Oh, What are you having to do? So what we have is we have a words partly provided which show a track change version which is still down to 1 to 6. So that's proposed by Councillor Tucker, seconded by Councillor Bartlett. That's now on the table for discussion. Any discussion, Councillor Gladding?
I would just, I'd like to propose an amendment. If you don't mind giving me a bit of leeway just to quickly read that out and explain. I don't know if I have a second, but it would be adding a point in there. It doesn't matter where it sits. It says, agree that Project 5 universal metering is a significant project requiring consultation via a special consultative procedure, and that this project, oh no, I don't need the rest of it because it was covered off in the thing.
Okay, so you would like amendment?
Amendment just to add a line, just for the avoidance of doubt for the community and people around the table, that agree that Project 5 universal metering is a significant project requiring consultation via a special consultative procedure.
Is there anybody who wants to second that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. I'll second that. Any discussion on that proposed amendment? I think Nikki, you've explained
Yeah, I just
why it should be there.
for me, it was clearly noted in the program business case that it was likely to be, but it didn't say it is and it will be. And then there was just nothing in the report that speaks to it. This would mean that everybody, including Ely, gets a fair shot at discussing, you know, the volumetric charging aspect of it, the different potential ways that we could do that. Look, I suspect it would happen anyway, but this is just for comfort. To draw a line under it, it's definitely a thing, and I think the chief executive signalled that it would likely happen anyway, but it doesn't hurt to add it. And it's just for the avoidance of doubt. It will be codified as meetings and engagement policy.
I agree. Yeah, I agree that it probably will be. I agree with Councillor Gladding's sentiment. Absolutely. I think it, rather than saying that it will be, perhaps it should say should, because we can't dictate what the CCO does.
Oh.
I don't think.
Just one point of clarification. I'm not entirely sure whether the special consultative procedure requirements apply to the CCO or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if, I honestly don't know whether those apply to the CCO, because this will be a CCO.
I'm basing this based on the timing in the program business case. Now, if the timing was to delay and be after July 27, and that's what the program business case said, I wouldn't be mentioning this, and I'd be dealing with it through the SOA. The issue is that we have this murky area where there are two different organisations, entities doing various things. The time that the consultation starts in the program business case is under QLDC's watch. So that's why I want to put it in there. And if the time shifts, then it will automatically leave us and progress under the but it means that
Okay. A little bit uncomfortable because we've moved away from the questions and we're into debate with an amendment on the table. So I think everyone understands what the amendment's trying to do and why, and not. And in fact, there is a project program. Is there any more discussion on the amendment?
I can support the amendment because I think that it's not, I think the direction's not quite right, and I feel like we have had the intent. Because I think the universal metering, we can't consult on whether we have universal metering, only how it would be implemented. So I don't feel 100%. Yeah, I don't feel 100% comfortable with the direction.
I'll be happy to change it to.
I just don't think it's required. I feel like we've heard from staff, so that's my position.
My share Mel's position. I think if it's still with us, we'll be, we'll have to do an SCP. If it's on the CCO, it's not with us. I don't think this amendment really adds anything to how things are progressing. I think the point's been made, and I totally appreciate where it's coming from, but I think it's clean.
Any more discussion on that?
Well, it's similar to me. I mean, you said it's for the avoidance of any doubt. I don't think there is any doubt really, and it feels like it's just adding in something that doesn't need to be there.
We can reply.
Don't worry about
Okay, great. So we have an amendment proposed. It's been on the screen. So those in favour of the amendment, please show. Okay, those against. Okay, that is lost. Okay. So we're back to debate on the motion.
I just want to bring it back to what we're talking about. I think this is a really, long awaited for initiative. We're by far the first movers on this. I think we're like one of the last 7, I think it said in the report something. So there's plenty of, business cases and use cases that we can learn from everywhere else, do it in the best possible way. I think that, empowering people with as much data as possible so they can, make the right decisions. Obviously, it's a huge part of leakage and will help better tell the story. I think, personally, I find this quite similar to electricity, where you can have a fixed cost to pay for the privilege of the infrastructure connected to property, and then a variable cost paying for the amount that you actually use, which is a very simple way of fairly paying people who do or don't use the system and still, the CapEx and OpEx. So there's just a million different sensible ways. There's obvious ways that we can move forward that help people's hesitation, given that, we're not the first to do it. It's a standard practice across a lot of infrastructure providers. But I think the report's really well written. It was quite insightful in the way that it's got through a lot of the discussion points. I'm looking forward to that being translated into the communications out to homeowners, because I think ultimately it'll give people some sense of security that we're moving forward in a really sensible way that makes sense. So great job on the work, and excited to support it.
Further discussion? I was just pointed out to me that the water infrastructure is a strategic asset under our significant engagement, so that's actually quite a significant protection of process, notwithstanding that there's already a decision made to end some of these decisions in the future to the water services CCO. But look, to be honest, came into the meeting not sure whether I support this, because I'm whether I'd be satisfied, but I am sort of satisfied it's a step. It's a transitional step, and that we're not committing to volumetric metering without further information or further assessment. I am still concerned that it's an enormous capital cost, and we might struggle to get the return on that investment in terms of the savings of it. But we'll keep moving forward, as they say. And I think I can support it on that basis, but I do still have questions.
Thanks. I guess for me, in principle, I support it, and I think there's ways of doing it equitably, and I like, in terms of the volumetric charging piece, and I support the baseline, having an allocation baseline and a certain amount that you pay for that to address these issues, and Quentin's spoken to that earlier. But it's for me, so I do support, it's just that some of the detail around the timings has me really, really concerned. It concerns me that the Gantt chart timeline has us compiling community feedback after we've done the RFP. So what I want is, this is a really sensitive issue for our communities, and I don't want us to compress the timeline in such a way that it undermines good community consultation. So this stuff will evolve over time, right? The project business case isn't going to be stuck to entirely, I don't imagine, and at this point it is in the territory of the Water Services CCO, but I guess in working together, if I can send a signal, I'd like to make sure that we genuinely consult, we give people the options, we take them through it in a time that they can get their heads around it, they can give us feedback. I understand doing the request for information, but in tandem with that, but I don't think we should be putting an RFP out to the market before we've fully spoken to and had the feedback from the community. So that would be my one wish. Is my current source.
I've probably been on record elsewhere for being not entirely comfortable at all with the whole reform agenda. The benefits are not high, benefits are significant, but the reality that we have to pay to be able to provide sustainable services for our communities in the future is something we can't ignore. And this is a demonstration of that. I'm really looking forward to, as a member of this council, along with our staff, working with, and there is a fuzzy line between the two, to be shared services, but working with the CCO in the future to ensure that we make these sort of hard decisions that in the past were difficult because politicians were making decisions. Now we're enabling the water entity to make those hard decisions. And we need to make the most of it. And there will be some governance checks and balances in that. So good on you. I like the way you've approached this and being adaptable just in the how to get the paper as right as possible. I think there's a bright future here. It's even more important with the announcements of the planning bill just this week, how critical water is going to be if we're going to have growth thrust upon us in a way that it's going to be even harder to manage. So thanks for the good work. Keep it up.
I've heard a number of speakers in support of this motion. Is there anybody who wants to put a different view or speak against it? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Okay, so I'll put this motion to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Here we go. We're back with Freedom Camping. Thank you very much.
Never ending issue.
And welcome back. Framing up my overview of this item. This is a highly technical procedural resolution that we are being asked to agree to give effect to the direction and decision we made at the last meeting.
Yeah, forward control. I've got Dave Winterburn joining today, sitting in for Ken Daly. This is Shane Monday, who's been online previously, and I believe Midday may be joining online if there's any wider responsible camping questions. So, as the mayor said, what we are here today to do is that following that 25th of June meeting, council determined it was satisfied in relation to the requirements of the Freedom Camping Act. So the next step is this report, and council's being asked to make statutory determinations and adopt a statement proposal for consultation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of little ones. So the timeline says, providing all these steps, and it goes through consultation deliberations that it would be adopted in a meeting in December, 17th of December council meeting. Would these changes come to fruition, would it be applicable immediately after that meeting, would it?
Through the chair, there probably would be operational time needed to put signs up, but I can't give you an exact on that. That's something that we can advise the hearing panel of, so that information is sent out.
Because from memory last time we approved it in advance of the 1st of December. There was a time frame between to get all those signage and everything in place, but obviously we're doing that 2 spots, yes. 3.
I would say as well, given the time of year it will be, the scope of this, I would imagine we'd be well prepared to be able to meet quicker.
Yeah, very good, thank you. The other one was that there's an open question left in the report about what's considered summer months. You have to define what they are. Do you have any advice on whether it should be December in January or December to February?
Through the chair, the December, January was put up to the council originally based on those being the highest visitor numbers. We have collated and can circulate, printed it out the visitor numbers throughout the year, and that might help the council make the decision needed today to decide on what months it would like to propose. Circulate that.
Yeah.
I just found there's here in the recommendation for this first line that is repeated twice.
First line.
First line. Yeah, the Gavin's crowd.
Oh, they're taking, no, you think they're right.
Sorry, I didn't pick it up earlier, I just noticed.
Yes.
They were good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Recommendation 0.4, first line.
That's that word that is repeated.
Oh,
It's a type.
through the chair, yes, I did spot, there's
There's
two.
another one.
that.
I'll find that one.
Yeah, one above two, one
Both
three.
in three.
Oh, there's two, sorry. Yes.
I crossed them out in my copy.
Thanks for that.
One day did find that account, yes, but it's still there.
Three.
So, I have a question around the visitor flows as well, and I'm just wondering, the visitor flows that are represented here, do they represent just the demographic that we're talking about, that causing issues around freedom camping of these sites, or is this generic visitor flows?
Through the chair, this is definitely a proxy, it is general visitor flows.
So it's all demographics, not necessarily just the freedom camping community. Okay, well, that changes my outlook on the data range. So,
Can I just follow up on my question? Because this came out in response to it. Because when I was reading through it originally before I saw the report that was talking about December, January, December to February, I wrote down, jotted down in my notes, you know, should it be December to April? And when you look at these numbers, there's potentially an argument for beyond February.
Agree.
But I don't know, you know, is that a feasible discussion here, or to go beyond February to March, you know, and or April, or March and maybe April?
I think that's a discussion and decision of council.
Was there any advice about whether that's
My question might be, speak to that, is there any evidence? So if we were to look at banning it for a specific period, we'll be asked for the evidence, presumably, of why you've chosen that time frame. Is there any evidence that's limited to a time frame, or is the evidence that we have just broadly across the?
Through the chair, I'll start out, and maybe Shireen can add to it, is that it is based on the visitor numbers for December, January, and we have not done a detailed analysis of sort of how that relates to specific freedom camping numbers. That wasn't part of the work that was undertaken.
Sorry.
Okay, if I may ask another question which might help, and it might be something Marie can speak to from the ambassador program, because there would have been a correlation between what the ambassador is reporting and I guess the infringements. You would assume there would be some sort of correlation between the volume of those and the frequency of the freedom camping, because I guess cause and effect. So interesting to see whether there's anything that we might be able to take away from that, Marie.
Are you muted, Marie?
I thought I was waiting for someone to unmute me. Apologies. Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah,
just couldn't.
Just whether if you were looking at from a enforcement and ambassador activity basis, what would peak look like? You know, what would be the you know, sort of, I guess, what's the law of diminishing returns of which interventions may not be worth following through, I guess.
Well, look, I definitely agree with the peaks being that January, February period. However, we do have a number of peaks and troughs that go right through to April. You'll see that in the data that we've reported on over the summer. We don't really see a significant drop until we sort of start to head into the end of March. In April, you've got school holidays and other things that happen around that time. And we've had things like warbirds and other events towards that later part of the season that have affected camping in the Upper Clutha area. So it is a little bit hard to tell. But yeah, it's still peak right through till April. where we see a significant drop off once the colder weather kicks in.
Thank you for that. Further questions? Okay.
What is the argument for taking November out of this? What is the argument in favor of having such a narrow band rather than simply November to April?
So the chair, you mean the narrow band in terms of just December, January?
Yeah.
That was primarily based on ensuring the maximum opportunity for freedom camping, knowing demand, and that the site would add additional controls at the absolute peak busy times of the year, while continuing to provide for it at the rest of the time of the year. But as signalled by the council at the last meeting, there was appetite to revisit that.
Similar question, I think. Regardless of the peaks and troughs of tourism, did we see any changes in the number staying on site? It's only a small number, you know. I just wonder whether it's impacted at all. The number of people staying there is impacted at all by the number of visitors in the district. So, do we have data on how many people were staying on site over the period? Does that dip off significantly in February or March? Or as Maria said, I think maybe winter.
Through the chair, we could find that. I think that the difficulty is that we have only 1 year of this bylaw being in place, so it's very difficult to provide any longitudinal themes of what that means year on year to provide an informed decision.
Okay.
I'll sort of round out my question again.
You go for it.
Now that I've processed the data. So, I mean, obviously from this, the two absolute peaks are December and January. They are, every year they are higher than the other November, March, April. So that's where, I guess, the advice is in the report. It does focus more on December and January than.
Yeah. Was that a question? Was it?
Question.
Okay, thank you. Are you,
To
there's another one.
do we have to put the dates
Well,
in?
well, I think we will need to. I'm just seeing if there's any more questions. Now I'll.
Unless we choose to prohibit.
I think we should bring in the dates during the discussion.
We have to move it with the dates.
Well, then having take some governance advice on if we want to insert the dates as a result of our discussion. Would we move the motion with those areas in 7B and 4 be left blank, and then be able to add those in at the end of our discussion, or with a
Can we move it with just December and January in here and discuss whether we to go beyond those?
Easier to
I think we should move it with them left blank. We'll have a discussion around there, and then see if we can land on a view on date.
Agreed. No, obviously it's okay, so let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably
Removed.
Yes, so we
I would say that in this issue particularly, it's quite important that the community understands what the council is proposing, and I would view that there is a degree of risk involved in leaving it open and then the council making a decision.
I don't think maybe open to discussion. It'll be decided by the next discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, we're not leaving here till we've agreed.
Very much.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Councillor Wong and Councillor White, thank you, moved and seconded discussion. But I'll
Okay,
you get
well, I'll
to
start.
that,
So based on what I know around movements of tourism and looking at this graph in front of us now, I think we can eliminate 2002, 2003, where that was really affected by COVID and international travellers not being here. So I think we need to really consider the later years in this graph for a start. The other thing is thinking about the youth market. That is probably more the freedom camper demographic that we're looking at around these sites. I would probably tend to think that they would travel certainly a lot longer than just January, February, and certainly December stands out in probably the last 2 weeks of December. So from the 15th of December onwards, that's where it all ramps up for tourism numbers. So I would include December. Definitely do January and February. March, not sure really, so I'm happy to have that discussion with the other councillors around that, but again, through what I know about youth market travelling and tourism in this district, December, January, February, definitely the strong months for that. That's what I'll be recommending anyway.
There you go. I was just going to say, from my observation of having stayed at a campsite at the head of the lake for the last 26 years, and what is the season of travelling? It's always been Labour weekend through to Easter or the end of the school holidays at Easter, whichever is sooner, depending on whether you've got the Easter and Anzac Day and weekend and Easter. We saw November was huge this year, and if you look at what was happening at Mackenzie, that November was the equivalent of February in terms of numbers of things. So certainly getting longer, and to a certain extent, a lot of freedom camping sites probably come under pressure because we do have a lot of people on working holiday visas who have self-contained vans and are having to use these sites. So there's definitely a community that is here more than just the 2 weeks on a Rick's camper van rental. So my feeling is the season is longer than just those 2 months, and that's.
I hear you 100%. I think this is going to be an imperfect science, no matter what we do. I think the best way to go about it is to keep it simple, because then people know. So I'm more in favour of just doing summer than having December, January, February, because then it's easy for the communications. It's easy to sort of cut it clean, open and close. I think, what we're trying to do isn't we're trying to manage the peak more than anything. I think, even though it's busy outside of that time, there's definitely some small events that will change it. The peak is when there becomes really big problems. A lot of high use, point in particular, as a recreational area, and then a lot of, that's where it exacerbates. So trim the peak, keep it simple, summer, 3 months. So we won't hit that.
It's flat by December, January, February.
December, January, February. That's summer, right?
Yeah, it depends. Councillor Laddie.
My concern, and lots of people around the table, including Cody, will not understand why, having sat on the panel, it's having the evidence to support your decision, including why you're limiting it to a certain number of months. So I don't see that. I haven't got information in front of me that says why just these 3 months, or 4 months, or 5 months. Why not the whole year? So to me, the evidence that I've seen is that it's only 5 sites, so I think it could be filled right the way through, regardless of the numbers. Right? It's the nature of the site to me, and the fact that there are bushes right there that are very attractive to people, and that also happen to be an area that kids run around in and play in because it's a recreation area. To me, the risk to people visiting the site is a year-round thing because of the nature of the site. It will maybe be more when more people are using it, but that could be 6-7 months of the year. So for me, I would support an actual prohibition. And the other reason for that is that then it appears on the prohibited maps. The risk with doing it this way and limiting it for a short period of time, I think, is that people will see that the site is able to be used. They have to read the fine print to see that, not this period of time. So personally, given what I've seen, I'd rather it was a prohibited site, but I'm prepared to agree to the motion going through and whatever everybody else has put in there, because I think the community can feedback that back, and that will be open to the panel to say, hey, we'd rather prohibit it, that's fine. But I do think the evidence, we're going to need to get some more evidence for the hearing panel around the numbers of bands at different times of the year, and when those when the feedback or the complaints have been made and so on.
Councillor Bartlett.
I was just going to say for that particular topic, I don't know whether it's a point of order. We've already had that debate about whether it's prohibition at Beacon Point Road or a thing. I think my last we had that discussion last time, and this is what we've come back with.
It's up
That's
to us
what
to
the
do
parties
what
get
we
out
do.
consultation based on the direction that we gave last time.
Okay. So Gavin, your thoughts, and John.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Bartlett on that one. Probably gone there. If we get feedback from the community that they would like that, then that's something that
panels to take on board, but I just did a bit of search on what the camper van industry, not the informal camper vans, which tend to be involved, but not exclusively. And they're suggesting that, you know, this graph is just going to be ramping upwards very quickly. They're saying we're forward bookings even 2 years out. Other than this might be a graph for climate change, but I suspect that we probably need to be a bit more strategic, going back to the previous discussion. If we're going to close these areas, we probably should start in November, because then the communication starts getting out, gets out on the camper van apps, that these places are becoming, that's when they start becoming popular, although here we don't know what happens in the months that aren't shown. But if we start only when the problem starts, people are already in the habit. So we need to start that education every season, I think. So I would probably go for November through to at least March, and then by then, although there does tend to be a pickup in April with holidays and everything, but I'd be inclined to go for the 4 months.
Just wondering why we are deciding date. Are we just deciding this to consult on and
Yes.
that to be changed?
Yeah.
But like, I'm with you, it should just be evidence-based, because it all comes down to legal challenges, right? At the end, is the whole, it could be legally challenged, right? If we were to say, well, let's just do 6 months.
Yeah. But this is what we're going out for consultation. So.
But our original decision could still be backed by evidence as well.
It's like we're kind of
Yep.
debating over 1 or 2 months, and we're going out to consult anyway.
I'm second to last, so in terms of talking, so it's got to be everyone else's finished before I speak.
I think we err in trying to manage the peaks, because I think we're trying to be a little bit too exact. I don't think these peaks, like Councillor Wong says, define the usage, and that's particularly around some of the casual workers during the holiday periods who tend to use freedom camping as a place to live. I'm very aware of that, because that's what happens for any of us in the hospital industry. There's some of those people using freedom camping as a place to stay. Also around harvest, cherries in December and in January, grapes in April. So I would support widening these bans to the max, 6 months, November to April. I think we otherwise encourage we encourage bad behavior by people trying to manage around those dates.
Okay, I'm second to last, so as a whole, I'm supporting the whole thing. I would like to propose that the insert months here is changed to November to April. I know that we've got a mixed view around the table, but this is to go out to consultation. I think this gives a good balance of being able to show that we're trying to do something that gives people the option of saying yay or nay or changing it, and the panel, which I would like to thank for putting their hands up for it because it won't be an easy task, can then make that final decision based on evidence and also the submissions that are made. So am I doing that right? If I'm just going to say that those are the dates that I would like to put forward. I don't know if we need to vote on the dates to be put in. What's the procedure here?
Whoever put the motion can adjust the motion to add them if you agree.
Okay, I'm just going to just allow the CE to.
So we reminder, obviously we discussed this at some length in the last meeting, we went in and out of PX. So just to encourage you to reflect on some of the information you were given in the PX with regards to evidence and timeframes and the risks associated in that initial paper.
Okay, but we have a proposal for a certain number of months to go into the consultation. Noting that isn't the decision to do anything other than consult on a window, and the hearing panel will be absolutely required to make a decision which is evidence based, and I think that's if we look at the process and the act, and that is what the hearing panel is going to have to do. They're going to have to weigh the submissions and the evidence against the requirements of the act in terms of their determination. So we are indicating a direction in agreeing any length of time, and I think that could be 2 months, it could be 6 months. I think to a certain extent, any time period may well be challenged, but that will be down to the evidence basis required by the hearing panel.
Sorry, that's just made me think, based on the evidence and what Michelle said, I think if we go out with saying 6 months, people will likely agree, because of course they want it longer because they don't want it. But so I feel like we could be setting ourselves up for failure or to be challenged if we went out with 3 and then strong, when people came back and submitted and they're like, no, it's not long enough. We had strong evidence that to help us in favour of extending it, in my mind, then we can show and prove that we could extend it. But we're being pragmatic during the summer period. I think it might be safer to do that way, where we're kind of leading them down the track, say 6 months.
I would take exactly the opposite view. Respect. And that is, I think we are much better to go out, if you want, with a negotiating point of 6 months, and then we can dial that back. I think it is harder to get from 3 to 6 than it is from 6 to 3.
Honestly, the other way.
Well, I mentioned the prohibition of.
Yeah, I mean, the submissions won't just be people that live locally. There will be from representatives of the industry, there will be from the rental industry. So there will be a range of representation. I imagine for that hearing panel, there will be legal advice given to the panel.
I'd encourage everyone to try to reflect the level of evidence that's outlined in the general report.
I am going to side with Councillor King here, and my original first statement was 3 months, because I'm very wary that there is a trade-off on either side of this discussion, and we will get submissions from not just our community, but the wider community as well. So I'm trying to find a balance where we equally annoy everybody, and then see where it lands for the panel.
I support Councillor King's suggestions.
So how do we proceed?
Right. Well, I think yeah, we've got a range of things. What I'm hearing is summer months, December, January, February, and I think if we put that motion with those months, December, January, February at 4 and 7B, and that would be I think that's just the 2 areas. Yes, sorry, and 6B.
4, 6B and 7B.
Yeah. We're all clear on that. We have had that motion proposed and seconded. We have added the dates during the discussion. So put that motion, those dates into the vote. Those in favour, please show.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Yeah, one abstention. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Next step on the journey. We're now moving on to the chief executive's report, and also wide range. Yeah. I'm just going to again frame this up, and this is not a criticism of anyone. It's an observation, but there's potentially some things in there that some council might feel would be better on the agenda, standalone item, where the more governance relates it rather than being in the CU. But I'm totally happy to go through. You know, we go through this as it is. But I think that just some of the commentary I've had is that some of the governance things could be separate, but we're not going to go there now.
I'd just like to point out that in the updated property acquisition policy,
paragraph 3.9 of the policy itself, relates to reporting to the Risk and Assurance Committee, but it should actually say the Smart Finance Committee. Those of you that read the policy, we would like to amend that, and in light of that, there is slight changing to one of the recommendations that Jane has. Just actually noticed to make that change. You got that word in there? Yes.
Can I ask a question around? Have we also got that in the smart finance, sorry, I should have looked, terms of reference?
I believe that's where it should go on.
Has it?
Just reading to the minor changes to the 2014 property sale and acquisition. And also agree to any further minor editorial changes with the effective from 23rd July 2026.
The editorial changes would be just where that reports back to. And I think we can probably understand that subsequently. Because we're not actually specifying where that goes.
I just think it would be good for the next chief exec's report to make an amendment probably to the smart finance committee terms of reference to make sure this is. But I think it is.
I'm really kind of happy to take it as read, to answer any questions you have.
Okay, well, we need to put 4 names in for a performance subcommittee, and the names that were circulated and landed on were myself, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Tucker, Councillor Gladdy. They just need to be added in at item 3. Okay, so any questions on
the whole report?
on any of those items 1 to 12?
Alcohol licensing? Oh,
It's the next one.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so other
Okay, right. Okay, so well, I'll the recommendation to the meeting, seconded Councillor White, and any discussion? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, quite a broad ranging report here. It's been a bit of chat about this. I agree with your observations. John, I think we need to, it'll be useful in future if we do have more of a discerning approach to this, that anything that's at all significant come out as a separate report. There's a lot of detail, a lot in here that kind of gets lost in the noise. Potentially it would be clearer. And I think actually when there's some items in here where we really should probably be applying the requirements of local government Act, where we should be looking at options and actually considering it, having a debate about it. Having it in this form doesn't really help with that at all. So I think we do at least need to meet our statutory obligation. And I think it would be clear if members of the public are trying to get a handle on what the community is doing. I think it'd be helpful if there was perhaps that might be something for going forward. What are the issues that the chief executive sees coming up in future, rather than just these sort of matters of business, really. Could be useful.
This is very much the format that has always existed.
I know.
If you look at briefing someone for a changed format, then it's going to do so.
Quite. So that's what I think. So I think we should do in future. Otherwise, I just want to talk to if probably we can, and Councillor White as the chair of the Organisational Excellence Committee. We had again talk about this outside, but enabling that committee to act as a first point of contact, if you like, for
appointments and remuneration, etc., rather than the council having and staff having to go through the process of identifying a panel each time. I think it makes life easier. I don't think there was anyone at that committee meeting who felt it would be overly onerous. I think it just helped things move along and just tidy up some of the way that this council's been structured committee-wise since Mayor proposed his approach. So I think it will help. Other than that, I'm happy to go with everything that's been included here.
Well, just so I haven't been party to any of these conversations about what may or may not have been included in this report, but I mean, these items, there's only a handful of them. They don't look particularly, substantial enough to have their own report on my report. Something the operational manner. So, just some other thing that I've missed. I can't see what the problem is with it.
I just want to support probably what Gavin's just said. I don't think they're operational. I just think that the recommendation was entrusted to the committee, I guess, and we would be duplicating work, I guess. I mean, to me, it's a case of recognising when something that might sit within a committee's terms of reference is actually chunkier enough to need to come to the full council and bringing it straight to full council despite those terms of reference, if that's possible. But I agree with Gavin, none of these things are particularly weighty. The papers are all that. Well, I just think there's so much work going on in council to duplicate that and have full papers is probably a bit crazy. If the chairs could bring back when they think something is significant, maybe and alert us, that might be a more efficient way of dealing with anything that's a bit crunchy.
Just a comment. I think the one that stands, and I'm on safe ground because we're not talking about performance reviews, but I think it is unusual for the chief executive in effect to be recommending the appointment of the performance review committee. And I mean, I
think this is the process.
I know. As I said, I'm not saying that it is structurally unusual that that's occurring that way. So that was the one that stood out to me as being incredibly unusual, but I agree that it's always occurred that way. It's just, it is just odd. And so that's one comment I did make. So
I'm gonna say when reports to me, I thought it's surprising, but it is appropriate. It is the way it has always historically been done.
okay.
Cool. I just want to follow up on what John Mitchell was saying in terms of the recommendation that the Organisational Excellence Committee put forward. So that was an idea put forward to ensure that there was a process in place and there was a group of people. The policy doesn't. The policy actually does allow for another committee to be set up at any point as well. So just to kind of make that point that it's not, doesn't have to be there, but that now allows that to become a process that might be a little bit more seamless. But if there was something big that came up, we could, a separate subcommittee could be appointed as well. The policy would ask for that. Just to make that point. I'm not sure anyone was concerned about it.
No, point well made though.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll put that to the vote.
I think you're on.
Yeah, I moved it and Councillor White seconded. Yeah, those in favour, please, Joe.
Aye.
Those against? Okay. Oh, sorry, I'll move forward. Yeah, okay. Actually, there was. Okay, thank you. Right, so we are now going to on where we're at. So we are now going to move into public excluded because we need to confirm the minutes of the public excluded. So move the public excluded, Councillor Tucker, seconded